So, when it comes to the UK, things are looking pretty bad. And I know that's easy to say, right? Like anyone can just go on social media these days and just say that Britain's on a downtrend. But what I want to show you today, I want to go the extra mile, and I want to show you some of the worst articles that we've seen recently. And they do get worse as we make it through the video. But we started the month off pretty strong. Because it says that experts have warned that there's worse to come for the high street, after 13,000 shops have been closed in 2024. And we'll move on to the next one in a second. But 13,000 shops. And it actually turns out that's the worst year on record. But the thing is, right, 2023 was also the worst year on record. So after every single year, it's just higher than ever. But whilst the local high street shops are just sat there struggling, it turns out that the government and the Home Office are doing the complete opposite. Because we saw that Home Office officials have spent £10,000 of taxpayer money on an extravagant meal at a London restaurant. And this restaurant, right, it was on top of the Gherkin. Like you're talking about one of the biggest buildings in London. Like a major part of the skyline. And they spent £10,000 on food. And if you're a numbers person like myself, it was across 45 people at the meal, and it worked out to about £230 each. And I'll move on to the next story in a second as well. But I got plenty of comments from yourselves, saying how you could pretty much feed your entire family for 1 week on the amount of money that these people spent in one night. And I really do think that that puts it into perspective. But if you wanted just a little more, like if that wasn't perspective enough, the very next day, we saw that the NHS has been giving asylum seekers priority care. And like you imagine that, you got British people waiting weeks for appointments, or waiting hours in A&E. Meanwhile, Sudanese Steve, Libyan Larry. Who else we got? We got Kazakhstan Keith, Algerian Alan. I've got a map, I'm just reading them off. Tanzanian Tim. And who can forget Djibouti Dave? All of these people just getting priority care on the NHS. Meanwhile, like I said, we got British people, like actual British people, waiting weeks. But believe it or not, we did actually see a little bit of good news. Because as you can see by this headline here, McDonald's has rolled back its DEI initiatives. And for a company the size of McDonald's to do this, especially with the amount of staff members that they have all over the globe, it really just goes to show that I don't want to say companies are starting to wise up, but I kind of feel like they're at least 1% of the way there. And I would like to say that the good news carries on. But this is where it does the 180 again. Because according to David Lammy, people smugglers are to have their finances targeted with sanctions. And like I said in the video at the time, straight out the gate, that sounds like a good move. And he says that he's going to freeze the bank accounts and assets of the people smugglers. And what someone commented, right, and it's a very fair point, is if they know where these people live and if they know what bank accounts they use, why don't they just go and arrest them? You know, like they've got enough information to figure out where the guy's HSBC account is. I mean, they could do that by just looking at the sort code. But like I said, if they know enough to know who they bank with, they'll know what cash points they use regularly. They'll know their local shops and things like that. And like a viewer commented, why don't they just go and arrest them? Like they've got all this information, but they're like, nah, we're just going to sit and watch them smuggle. Funny that, isn't it? It's kind of like they're on board. And then the very next day, I mean, if anyone wants to apply for this job, I'd really recommend it. Because it's for the head of Equality, Diversity and Inclusion for the NHS in North East London. And just for that one section of London there, just that one part of it, they're offering over £91,000 a year, just for being the head of Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. And if you wanted to know what that works out to on a monthly basis, like what the taxpayers are paying these people every single month, it works out to £7,611 every single month. Like you imagine that? What's that, like almost $2,000 a week? Honestly, we're getting absolutely fleeced here, fellas. And I didn't actually time this one on purpose. But I'd like to say, speaking about fleecing, we've got the BBC TV licence fee. And they're saying that it could... Oh, wait, hold on to your seat. I hope you sat down here, fellas. They're saying it could be scrapped by the end of 2027. Imagine that. No more TV. We've done it. We've done it. However, it turns out that Labour are just going to put the TV licence on the pile of taxes. Like, instead of us all paying for it specifically, they're just going to put it into what they're calling general taxation. So they're going to try and sell this as, like, it says there, in a huge relief for millions of Brits. But, like, we're still paying for it. And that's if they can get this over the line. But it just means that instead of, like, 170 odd quid coming out by direct debit each year, it just means they're just going to take it through general taxation. But we're the taxpayers. Do you know what I mean? We're the bill payers, plus we're also the taxpayers. So if they move it from being a bill to a tax, we're still the payer. But they're going to try and tell us that it's a good deal. But if you thought that giving millions to the BBC was a bad deal, well, the very next day we saw $30 million being sent to 40 countries, including places like Guatemala. And I'm not being funny, right? But I've never known of Guatemala to send us money. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've never known the Guatemalan government to just send us millions when we needed it. And you cast your mind back over the last couple of years. We've had double-digit inflation. We've gone through a recession. We had like 4 prime ministers in about 12 months. We've apparently got our own climate issues as it is. But we're the ones giving away millions of pounds. I don't know, call me sceptical, call me a clown. But I really don't think this is justified. In fact, it's a bit like this one that we saw the very next day. Because it says that millions of drivers have been hit by a record high cost of pothole damage. And as you can see right at the bottom there, it says that in 2024, in terms of pothole damage, it cost £579 million. That's over £500 million. But what gets me about things like this, right, was that if this was Downing Street or something similar, there's no way they're going to have a single pothole in that entire place. Like, imagine that, just Downing Street, just covered in potholes. It's never going to happen. But when it comes to your street, well, according to the politicians, it's not important. But something that really caught my eye was this Instagram reel here. It was posted by a Muslim, and you can see up there. It claims that this is what the UK is going to be like without immigrants. And like I always say, I'm not being funny. But we got beans on toast, we got toast under beans, we got toasty beans, and we've also got Enoch Powell in the window up there. Like, it doesn't actually look like a bad deal. You know, I'm pretty, like, maybe it's just me. But I would take this, you know? As opposed to what? Like, Turkish barbers on every corner. A curry house next to it. And next to that, we've currently got a migrant hotel. Whereas this alternative that you're looking at on the screen, like, they say it as a joke. But just like yourself, I would absolutely take this reality in a heartbeat. But just like that guy in the last post didn't quite get it, I'm starting to think it about the shops as well. Because we got this photo here from Sainsbury's. And the first time I saw it, right, I just thought, you know, it's just a couple of security tags. We've seen them all before, it's all good. It's not even a story. But upon closer inspection, you can see that only the front cans have security tags on them. As if to say the ones at the back don't matter, because, like, you know, they can't be seen by the general public. And almost as if to say that all of these security tags, well, they're just kind of for show. You know, like, if they actually cared about the product on the shelf, they'd do all of them. But instead they've just done the front ones and they've just called it a day. But while Sainsbury's are worried about security, I think the real problem's already arrived. Because the very next day we saw a statistic which, like, honestly, it really did shock quite a lot of people. Because it says that up to 1 in 12 in London is an illegal migrant. I want to say shocked, right? Like, obviously when you go to London, it's very, very difficult to find a British person. But the fact that it's up to 1 in 12 people in London, like, it's already got a massive population as it is. So 1 in 12, that is an awful lot of people. And that's first generation as well. That's not like they've had kids or anything like that. So once you start to work all of that out, honestly, it starts to look a whole lot worse. But at least we'll have Istanbul barbers just taking over historic British buildings. And whilst the government just look after migrants, they send us the bill. Because it says that there's plans for another 10% council tax hike. And this particular one is in Birmingham. And I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of months' time, especially when it gets near April, I wouldn't be surprised if most councils in the UK are doing exactly this. I mean, you can just see by that photo on screen, like, the state that they keep Birmingham in. But here they are, just charging them 10% more. Same as last year, they got a 10% price rise then too. And like I said, whilst we work hard, like, you and me, we do work hard. But the government's just going to give, sometimes, I don't know. But the government's just going to sit there and just give all of our money to random people from random places. Because it says that the council has defended £1,000 grants for Afghan refugees to take driving lessons. And, no, I don't think we should be doing that. You didn't get your driving paid for. And the government's not going to pay for your kids' driving lessons. But apparently we've all got to whip around, put money into a pot, to just give to Afghan Alan. Because let's say, for example, that you went to Afghanistan. I'm not saying you'd want to, right? But let's say that you did. Maybe you got on the wrong plane or something like that. But I really don't think the Afghan government, Mohammed and Mohammed, Jesus. I don't think they're going to be paying for our driving lessons. We'd be lucky to make it out of that place alive, let alone with £1,000 grant and a car. Honestly. And you would think, right, with the government just giving away this money just left, right and centre. I just find it very strange when the government now all of a sudden just start caring about saving money. Because it says that HMRC is set to hire 5,000 new inspectors to target working people on ordinary incomes. And then we go to this second headline here, right? As if 5,000 new taxmen wasn't enough. It says the Department for Work and Pensions is set to launch searches and will raid benefits claimants' homes. So whilst the government is just giving money to random migrants and billions to fund wars that we didn't start, apparently the government's just going to send people to your house, walk through the door, fully legal as well, and then just start searching your house. And I get that they're looking for tax fraud, right? I get that. But I would really like them to search Downing Street to begin with. And that's the thing when it comes to the news. All of these articles that we see, they all sort of just blend in. You see one bad article and then the next day you see another. But by the time a couple of weeks has gone past, we've all forgotten all of the bad stuff that's already happened just in that month alone. But when you see it all laid out in front of you, just a selection of bad things that happened in that 1 month, I gotta tell you, it really does put it into perspective. And if you enjoyed this Daily Clown World video, then I would highly recommend to become one of the 59,095 subscribers.
This country has gone crazy.